Alan's boots crunched against the brittle crust of Kepler 442c, each step releasing puffs of rust-colored dust that clung to his weathered jacket. The exoplanet stretched endlessly in every direction, a testament to failed promises and dying dreams. 3 years into the terraforming project, and they had precious little to show for it except stubbornly barren soil and atmospheric readings that mocked their efforts. He paused at the rim of a fresh crater, squinting against the harsh binary sunset. Something glowed down there, pulsing weakly like a dying star. Alan rubbed his scarred knuckles, a nervous habit from his drilling accident days, and activated his scanner. The readings made no sense. Massive organic signatures, cellular activity, but fading fast. "Reagan!" he called across the rocky expanse, spotting her lean silhouette near a cluster of experimental growth pods. "You need to see this." Dr. Reagan Vasquez straightened from her crouched position, soil-stained fingers carefully sealing a sample container. Her sharp dark eyes followed Alan's gesturing toward the crater, and something in his voice, that rare crack of excitement breaking through his usual dry practicality, made her abandon her meticulous cataloging. She approached with deliberate steps, her movements precise despite the uneven terrain. "What have you found now?" Her measured tone carried a hint of warmth. Alan's discoveries usually meant more work, but they also meant hope. Together they descended into the crater. The glow intensified, revealing something that shouldn't exist on this dead world. A massive creature, easily the size of an elephant, with skin that shifted between moss-like textures and smooth bioluminescent patches. Tendrils, thin as whips, extended from its bulk, most lying motionless in the dust. "My God," Reagan breathed, her steady voice faltering. Deep gashes scored the creature's hide, leaking a luminous sap that pooled in the crater's depression. Its breathing was labored, each exhale a rasping whisper. Alan crouched beside it, his scanner beeping frantically. "Cellular degradation is accelerating. Whatever this thing is, it's dying." He looked up at Reagan, his hazel eyes bright with determination. "We can't just leave it." Reagan knelt opposite him, her experienced hands hovering over the creature's wounds. The leaf tattoo on her wrist seemed to glow in the reflected bioluminescence. "These injuries, they're not from impact. Someone did this deliberately." A low hum emanated from the creature, so faint they almost missed it. One tendril twitched, curling weakly toward Reagan's outstretched palm. "It's trying to communicate," she whispered. Alan was already pulling emergency medical supplies from his field kit, his movements quick and decisive. "Then let's make sure it gets the chance." The makeshift medical bay in their habitat module buzzed with improvised equipment. Alan had jury-rigged a nutrient delivery system from hydroponics components, his scarred hands working with practiced efficiency despite the unconventional patient. Tubes snaked across the floor, carrying a synthetic protein solution Reagan had hastily formulated. "This is madness," Commander Hayes growled from the doorway, his stocky frame filling the entrance. The team leader's weathered face was etched with deeper lines than usual, his close-cropped gray hair catching the harsh overhead lighting. "We're wasting resources on some alien thing." Alan didn't look up from his work, adjusting the flow rate on his improvised ivory. "It's a living being, Commander, and it might be the key to understanding why this planet won't cooperate with our terraforming efforts." Hayes crossed his arms, his weight shifting back in that familiar stance of skepticism. "Our supplies are calculated down to the gram. Every calorie we feed that creature is one less for the team." Reagan emerged from the habitat's small laboratory, carrying a bowl of viscous green paste. Her leaf tattoo seemed more prominent in the dim light, and her dark eyes held a quiet determination that made Hayes pause his objections. "This is a healing compound, derived from the few native plants that actually grow here," she explained, her voice maintaining its measured precision. "If we can stabilize its condition, we might learn why it was abandoned." The creature lay on the reinforced platform they'd constructed, its bioluminescent patches pulsing weakly but more regularly than before. The gashes in its hide had stopped leaking, and several tendrils now responded to movement in the room. Alan crouched beside it, his slight hunch more pronounced as he leaned in to check the nutrient feeds. "The cellular regeneration is remarkable. It's processing our synthetic proteins and converting them into something else entirely. Regan applied the healing paste with deliberate care, her steady hands working around the creature's wounds. Where the compound touched damaged tissue, a faint luminescence spread, and the flesh began to knit itself together. Hayes stepped closer despite himself, his rigid posture softening slightly. How long before we know if it will survive? The immediate crisis is passing, Regan said, a subtle smile playing at the corners of her mouth, but we'll need to monitor it constantly for the next 48 hours. The creature's breathing had deepened, each inhalation less labored than the last. One tendril, thicker than the others, slowly extended toward Alan. When it made contact with his forearm, a warm tingle spread through his skin. "Did you feel that?" Alan asked, his eyes widening. Regan nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It's trying to establish some kind of connection." Hayes rubbed his neck, a gesture that betrayed his uncertainty. 48 hours, he said finally. "Then we reassess." He turned to leave, then paused. "And if this thing dies anyway, we're not wasting any more resources on sentiment." As the commander's footsteps faded, Alan and Regan exchanged glances. The creature's glow pulsed once, strongly, as if acknowledging their commitment. "We won't let that happen," Regan whispered, her fingers gently stroking one of the creature's tendrils. Regan knelt in the experimental growth sector, her hands deep in soil that had been barren 3 days ago. Now, tiny green shoots pushed through the surface, their leaves unfurling with impossible vigor. Her scanner showed nitrogen levels that defied explanation, and the pH balance had shifted from hostile to hospitable overnight. "Alan, you need to see this," she called, her usually measured voice carrying an edge of excitement. Alan jogged over from the main habitat, his weathered jacket flapping behind him. He dropped to one knee beside her, pulling out his geological scanner. The readings made him blink twice before the grin broke across his face, that rare expression that transformed his perpetually squinting features. "The mineral composition has completely changed," he said, sketching rapid notes in his field journal. "Trace elements that were absent yesterday are now present in optimal ratios for plant growth." Regan held up a soil sample, its texture rich and dark compared to the rust-colored dust that covered the rest of the planet. "It started here, in a perfect circle around where we found the creature. The effect is spreading outward at approximately 1 meter per day." In the habitat's medical bay, their patient had grown stronger. The massive creature's bioluminescent patches now pulsed with vibrant greens and blues, and its tendrils moved with fluid grace rather than the weak twitches of 3 days ago. The wounds had healed completely, leaving intricate patterns across its moss-like skin. "It's the spores," Regan continued, pointing to nearly invisible particles drifting from the creature's tendrils. "They're microscopic, but each one carries a complex mixture of nutrients and symbiotic bacteria. When they contact the soil, they trigger a cascade of biological processes." Alan mapped the expanding fertile zone on his tablet, his quick gestures betraying his growing excitement. "If this continues at the current rate, we could have viable agricultural land within a month. This creature isn't just healing, it's terraforming." The sound of approaching footsteps made them both turn. Commander Hayes emerged from the habitat, but he wasn't alone. A towering figure followed him, its chitinous exoskeleton gleaming dully in the binary starlight. The alien overseer moved with precise mechanical steps, its multifaceted eyes scanning the transformed landscape. "Overseer Vexai," Hayes said, his voice carefully neutral. "As requested, here's the situation report." The alien's mandibles clicked rhythmically as it surveyed the green shoots sprouting from previously dead soil. Its claws pointed sharply at the medical bay where their patient rested. "The specimen was to be eliminated," Vexai stated, its translator device giving the words a metallic edge. "Your species was instructed to dispose of defective biomaterial." Regan stood slowly, her posture straightening as she faced the towering alien. "With respect, Overseer, this creature is far from defective. It's demonstrating remarkable terraforming capabilities." Alan rose beside her, his stance defiant despite the size difference. "Our entire mission here is to make this planet habitable. This being could accomplish in months what would take us decades." Vexai's eyes flickered. a barely perceptible sign of agitation. The specimen is aberrant. Its continued existence threatens established protocols. The creature in the medical bay let out a low hum, audible even through the habitat walls. More spores drifted from its tendrils, and Reagan noticed the green shoots around them growing visibly larger. Hayes stepped forward, his duty-bound nature warring with the evidence before his eyes. "Overseer, the results speak for themselves. Perhaps we should reconsider." "The specimen will be terminated," Vexai interrupted, its mandibles clicking faster. "Compliance is not optional." Allen clenched his fists, jaw tight with frustration. "We won't let you destroy it." The tension in the habitat's main chamber was thick enough to cut with a blade. Overseer Vexai loomed over the assembled terraforming team, its 7-foot frame casting shadows that seemed to swallow the room's light. The alien's multifaceted eyes fixed on each human in turn, mandibles clicking in a rhythm that spoke of barely contained authority. "Your insubordination has been noted," Vexai stated, its translator rendering the words with cold precision. "The specimen will be eliminated within 24 standard hours. This directive is not subject to debate." Allen stood slightly apart from the others, his weight shifted forward as if ready to spring into action. His scarred knuckles were white with tension. "That specimen has accomplished more terraforming in 3 days than we've managed in 3 years. Destroying it would be criminal stupidity." The overseer's claws gestured sharply, cutting through the air like blades. "Your emotional attachment to the creature is irrelevant. It was deemed a failure by its creators and abandoned for termination. Your species was merely expected to dispose of waste material." Reagan stepped closer to Allen, her dark eyes flashing with controlled anger. Her usually steady voice carried an edge of steel. "If it's such a failure, why are you so afraid of what it might accomplish?" A low hum echoed from the medical bay, where the creature had been listening to the heated exchange. The sound carried an almost musical quality, and through the transparent walls they could see its tendrils extending toward the main chamber. Commander Hayes rubbed his neck, that telltale sign of internal conflict. His duty as mission commander warred with the undeniable evidence of their patient's miraculous abilities. "Overseer, surely we can reach some compromise. The creature could be studied under controlled conditions." "Negative." Vexai's interruption was sharp as breaking glass. "The specimen possesses capabilities that exceed acceptable parameters. Its continued existence threatens operational stability." Allen's grin was sharp and humorless. "You mean it threatens your control over this planet's development?" The alien's eyes flickered, surprise breaking through its cold composure for just an instant. Reagan caught the reaction, her scientific mind filing away the observation. "The creature shows signs of advanced intelligence," she said, her voice returning to its measured precision. "It's not just randomly terraforming. It's creating specific environmental conditions, almost as if it understands what we're trying to accomplish." As if summoned by her words, more spores drifted from the medical bay, visible in the habitat's recycled air. Where they settled on the team's clothing and equipment, tiny green growths began to appear, not destructive but symbiotic, enhancing rather than damaging. Hayes noticed the phenomenon first, staring at the small moss-like patch that had formed on his sleeve. "It's not trying to harm us. If anything, it's trying to help." Vexai's mandibles clicked faster, its rigid posture never wavering. "Emotional reasoning will not alter facts. The specimen is scheduled for termination. Interference will result in mission reassignment for all personnel." Allen stepped forward, his chin raised in direct challenge. "Then reassign us. We're not killing something that could save this world." Reagan moved to stand beside him, her posture inviting but resolute. "The data is clear, Overseer. This creature represents a breakthrough in terraforming technology. Destroying it would be a waste of unprecedented proportions." The creature's humming grew louder, and its bioluminescent patches pulsed in what seemed like a rhythmic pattern. Through the medical bay's transparent walls they could see it had risen to its full height, tendrils fanned out like a living aurora. Vexai's gaze lingered on the magnificent display, and for a moment something almost like uncertainty crossed its alien features. Then the cold mask returned. "24 hours," it repeated, turning toward the exit with mechanical precision. "Compliance will be enforced." As the overseer's footsteps faded, Alan was already moving toward the medical bay, his mind racing with possibilities. The sleek alien vessel descended through Kepler 442c's thin atmosphere like a silver knife cutting through amber sky. Alan watched from the habitat's observation dome, his hands pressed against the transparent aluminum as three new figures emerged from the craft. Unlike the utilitarian appearance of Overseer Vex High, these beings moved with fluid grace, their biosuits shimmering with organic patterns. "They're beautiful," Reagan whispered beside him, her scientific curiosity overriding her apprehension. The delegation approached with measured steps, their leader, a tall being with iridescent skin visible through its translucent suit, gesturing with movements that seemed more like dance than communication. When they entered the habitat, the very air seemed to change, carrying scents of ozone and growing things. "I am Architect Zephyra," the leader announced, its voice carrying harmonic overtones that needed no translation device. "We are the Keth'moran, creators of the being you have preserved." Commander Hayes stepped forward, his posture automatically deferential in the presence of such obvious authority. "Welcome, Architect. We're honored by your presence." Alan remained near the back, his weathered features set in stubborn lines. Something about this felt wrong. If they were the creators, why hadn't they come sooner? Zephyra's attention fixed on the medical bay, where the creature basked in the artificial sunlight, its tendrils swaying in unfelt breezes. The specimen was abandoned here for specific reasons. Your intervention, while compassionate, has created complications. Reagan's steady voice cut through the diplomatic niceties. "What kind of complications?" The architect's expression shifted, revealing something almost like regret. "The being you call a creature is one of our most advanced biotools. It was designed to terraform worlds rapidly and completely. However, its capabilities proved excessive." Alan felt his stomach drop. "Excessive how?" "It cannot be controlled once fully activated," another Keth'moran answered, its voice carrying harmonics of fear. "On our homeworld of Keth'mora Prime, a similar entity transformed the entire planetary ecosystem in a matter of days. The changes were beautiful but absolute. Every native species was replaced with hybrid organisms optimized for the entity's vision of perfection." Zephyra gestured toward the spreading circle of fertility outside the habitat. "This specimen was intended for termination because its terraforming matrix was corrupted during creation. Instead of working within existing ecosystems, it seeks to replace them entirely." Hayes's face went pale. "Are you saying it's dangerous to us?" "Not directly," Zephyra replied, "but if allowed to reach full activation, it will transform this entire world according to its own design. Your terraforming goals, your agricultural plans, your very genetic structures, all will be altered to serve its conception of optimal life." Reagan's leaf tattoo seemed to pulse as she processed this information, her scientific mind racing through implications. "The spores we've observed, they're not just fertilizing the soil, they're rewriting the biological foundations of everything they touch." Alan moved closer to the medical bay, drawn by the creature's increasing luminescence. As if sensing his approach, several tendrils extended toward the transparent barrier, their tips glowing with warm, inviting light. "It doesn't feel malicious," he said quietly. "When I'm near it, I sense curiosity, intelligence, maybe even affection." Zephyra's harmonics shifted to something resembling pity. "The specimen forms emotional bonds with those who care for it. This attachment makes its transformations more dangerous, not less. It will reshape reality to keep its chosen companions safe and happy, regardless of their actual wishes." The creature's humming intensified, and more spores began drifting from its tendrils. Where they landed on the habitat's walls, strange new growths appeared. Not quite plant, not quite mineral, but something entirely other. Alan's hand moved to his pocket, where he'd hidden the small scanner he'd been using to track the entity's biological signatures. His readings showed something that made his blood run cold. The transformation wasn't limited to the planet's surface. The very air they breathed was changing, molecule by molecule. "How long do we have?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zephyra's response carried the weight of terrible certainty. If current progression continues, total planetary transformation will occur within 36 standard hours. After that point, nothing of the original world will remain. Reagan's hand found Alan's, her steady fingers intertwining with his scarred ones. "Then we need to hide it," she said quietly. "Buy ourselves time to find another solution." "There is no other solution," Zephyra stated. "The entity must be terminated before full activation occurs." Alan's jaw clenched, his body tensing with familiar defiance. "Like hell it does." The limestone cave system stretched deep into Kepler 442c's bedrock, its walls weeping with mineral deposits that sparkled in the glow of their portable lights. Alan had discovered these caverns during his initial geological surveys, but they'd been deemed too unstable for habitation. Now, as he guided the creature through the winding passages, instability seemed like the least of their concerns. "Easy," Reagan murmured, her steady hands guiding the massive being around a particularly narrow bend. The creature's bioluminescent patches provided their own illumination, casting dancing shadows on the cave walls. Its tendrils explored the rough stone surfaces with what seemed like wonder. Behind them, the entrance had been carefully concealed with a rockfall that Alan had triggered using his jury-rigged explosives. To any casual observer, it would appear to be just another geological collapse in the planet's unstable crust. "The Keth'morans will scan for biological signatures," Reagan said, her voice echoing softly in the confined space. "How long before they locate us?" Alan was already setting up his scanner array, modified to work as a localized dampening field. "These caves are rich in ferromagnetic minerals. Between that and the depth, we should be invisible to their sensors for at least a few hours." The creature settled into the cave's largest chamber, its massive form filling the space like a living centerpiece. As it relaxed, spores began drifting from its tendrils in greater concentration than they'd ever observed. Where the microscopic particles touched the bare stone, something remarkable began to happen. Moss appeared first, spreading across the limestone walls in fractal patterns of green and gold. Then came formations that defied classification, part mineral, part organic, creating crystal gardens that pulsed with their own internal light. The very air grew richer, easier to breathe, as if the creature was transforming the cave's atmosphere to better support life. "My God!" Reagan whispered, her dark eyes wide with scientific fascination. She pulled out her sampling kit, collecting specimens of the hybrid formations. "The cellular structure is unlike anything in terrestrial biology. It's creating entirely new forms of life." Alan's scanner readings painted an even more incredible picture. The mineral matrix of the stone is changing. It's incorporating organic compounds at the molecular level, creating structures that are simultaneously living and geological. A low, resonant hum filled the chamber as the creature extended its tendrils toward both humans. When the tips made contact with their skin, warmth flooded through them, carrying with it a sense of profound connection. Images flashed through Alan's mind, not his own memories, but something far older and more complex. He saw worlds transformed into gardens of impossible beauty, where the line between plant and animal, mineral and organic, had been completely erased. Civilizations that had learned to live in harmony with these hybrid ecosystems, their technology seamlessly integrated with biological processes. Reagan gasped, her hand tightening on the tendril that touched her wrist. "It's showing us something, a vision of what it wants to create." The images shifted, revealing Kepler 442c as it could become not the sterile agricultural world the terraforming project envisioned, but a living entity unto itself. Cities that grew like flowers, transportation networks that functioned like circulatory systems, technology that breathed and reproduced and evolved. "It's not trying to destroy our work," Alan realized, his voice filled with wonder. "It's trying to perfect it." The creature's humming intensified, and more spores filled the air. Where they settled on Alan and Reagan's skin and clothing, they created the same hybrid structures, not invasive or harmful, but enhancing their natural biology in subtle ways. Reagan noticed her vision growing sharper, her sense of smell more acute. Alan felt his chronic back pain from years of fieldwork simply vanish. "The Keth'morans were afraid," Reagan said, understanding dawning in her voice, "not of destruction, but of change, of losing control over their perfectly ordered worlds. Alan pulled up the geological surveys on his tablet, cross-referencing them with the creature's spreading influence. If it continues at this rate, the entire cave system will be transformed within hours. We'll have created a sanctuary that's completely self-sustaining. A rumbling sound echoed from the cave entrance, distant explosions as search teams worked to uncover their hiding place. The Keth'morans had not given up their hunt. The creature's tendrils swayed toward the sound, its bioluminescent patches pulsing with what seemed like determination. More spores began releasing, but these were different, larger, more complex, carrying information rather than simple transformation commands. "It's preparing for something," Regan observed, her steady hands checking her equipment. "Some kind of defensive response." Alan gripped his scanner tighter, his scarred knuckles white with tension. "Then we'd better be ready to help it." Above them, the sound of excavation grew closer. The morning sun revealed a planet reborn. Where once barren dust had stretched to every horizon, now waves of emerald grass rippled in the gentle breeze. Trees with silver bark and leaves that sang in harmonious whispers dotted the landscape, their roots visible through translucent soil that sparkled with bioluminescent minerals. Alan stood atop a ridge that hadn't existed the day before, his weathered face split by the widest grin anyone had ever seen him wear. His scanner readings showed atmospheric oxygen levels that exceeded optimal parameters, while the soil beneath his feet hummed with vibrant life. "The transformation accelerated during the night," Regan called up to him, her voice carrying easily through the crystal-clear air. She knelt beside a stream that bubbled with water so pure it seemed to glow from within. "The entire eastern continent has been affected." Commander Hayes emerged from the relocated habitat, now seamlessly integrated into a living structure that had grown around their original modules. His rigid military bearing had softened considerably as he watched his team move through this transformed world with obvious joy and wonder. "Atmospheric processors are registering completion rates we never dreamed possible," he reported, his gruff voice carrying a note of amazement. "If these readings are accurate, the planet is now more habitable than Earth." The creature rested in a grove that had formed around it overnight, its massive form serving as the heart of an ecosystem that pulsed with symbiotic life. Its tendrils swayed among branches that bore fruit unknown to any terrestrial biology, while hybrid organisms that seemed part plant, part animal moved through the undergrowth with graceful purpose. Alan scrambled down the ridge with his characteristic quick movements, pulling up data on his tablet. The mineral distribution pattern suggests the transformation extends at least 50 kilometers in every direction. We're not just looking at local terraforming, this is planetary-scale ecosystem engineering. Regan's steady hands worked with a new species of flower that had sprouted near the stream, its petals opening to reveal internal structures that function like tiny solar panels. "Every organism I've cataloged shows optimization for maximum environmental benefit. Nothing is wasted, nothing is redundant, it's perfect." The sound of approaching aircraft cut through the peaceful morning. A formation of Keth'moran vessels descended from the cloudless sky, their bioorganic hulls gleaming like polished shells. Behind them came the more familiar bulk of human ships, representatives from the colonial administration drawn by the impossible atmospheric readings. Overseer Vexai emerged from the lead Keth'moran craft, its insectoid form moving with agitated jerks. Its mandibles clicked rapidly as it surveyed the transformed landscape, multifaceted eyes flickering with what might have been panic. "This confirms our worst projections," Vexai announced, its translator device rendering the words with harsh mechanical precision. "Planetary contamination is complete. Sterilization protocols must be implemented immediately." Alan stepped forward, his posture defiant despite the overwhelming alien presence. "Contamination? Look around you. This planet is thriving." Architect Zephyra approached with flowing movements, its harmonious voice carrying notes of regret. "You do not understand the implications. The entity has rewritten the fundamental laws of biological interaction on this world. Nothing that grows here will be compatible with standard galactic ecosystems." Regan rose from her position by the stream, her dark eyes flashing with controlled anger. Compatible with whose standards? You abandoned this creature because it wouldn't conform to your vision of ordered development. The creature in the grove stirred, its bioluminescent patches pulsing in response to the tension. A low harmonic filled the air, and the hybrid organisms throughout the transformed landscape began to glow in sympathetic resonance. It's responding to our emotions, Hayes observed, his tone carrying reluctant admiration, defending us. Spores began drifting from every plant and tree, creating a shimmering cloud that surrounded the human team. Where the particles touched their skin and clothing, they felt a surge of vitality and connection, not just to each other, but to the living world around them. Admiral Chen, representing the colonial administration, stepped forward with obvious amazement. "Commander Hayes, your reports indicated terraforming difficulties. This planet appears to be a complete success." Allen's grin widened as he gestured to the abundant life surrounding them. "It is a success, Admiral, just not the kind anyone expected." Vexai's claws pointed sharply at the creature. "The specimen must be eliminated before its influence spreads beyond this system. We cannot permit such uncontrolled evolution." The creature's humming intensified, and every hybrid organism on the planet began to pulse with synchronized light, a display of unity and power that left no doubt about who truly controlled this world now. The standoff stretched across the transformed meadow like a line drawn in shifting sand. On one side, the combined forces of the Keth'moran delegation and their enforcement drones formed a precise military formation, their bioweapons gleaming with deadly efficiency. On the other, the small human terraforming team stood with the creature at the center of its hybrid grove, surrounded by organisms that pulsed with protective bioluminescence. Overseer Vexai raised one clawed appendage, and the enforcement drones began their advance with mechanical precision. Final warning: stand aside or be classified as contaminated assets requiring sterilization. Allen planted his feet wide, his scarred hands working quickly to activate the defensive systems he'd jury-rigged throughout the grove. Shaped charges positioned in the silver-barked trees, sensor scramblers that would interfere with targeting systems, even a modified geological scanner that could generate localized electromagnetic pulses. "You want it? You'll have to go through us," he said, his voice carrying the dry conviction that had gotten him in trouble with authority his entire life. Reagan moved to flank the creature, her steady hands guiding it toward the deeper protection of the grove's heart. The massive being responded to her touch, its tendrils curling around her shoulders with gentle strength. "The data doesn't support your position, Overseer. This ecosystem is stable, beneficial, and self-regulating." Commander Hayes stepped up beside Allen, his military training evident in his balanced stance and alert posture. The gruff commander who had once doubted their mission now stood ready to defend it with his life. "My team has accomplished more in 1 week than the previous 3 years combined. I won't let you destroy that." The first wave of drones crested the meadow's edge, their sensors sweeping the grove for tactical weaknesses. Allen triggered his first defensive measure, a rockfall that had been carefully prepared in the hills above. Boulders the size of small buildings crashed down, crushing several drones and forcing the formation to scatter. "Impressive improvisation," Architect Zephyra observed, its harmonious voice carrying notes of reluctant respect, "but ultimately futile. You cannot prevail against our technological superiority." The creature's response was immediate and overwhelming. Every plant, every tree, every blade of hybrid grass in the grove began releasing spores in coordinated bursts, the air filled with a dense cloud of bioluminescent particles that interfered with the drone's optical systems and clogged their atmospheric processors. Through the sparkling fog, hybrid organisms emerged from throughout the transformed landscape, not aggressive predators but protective symbionts, creatures that had been part plant, part animal, now revealed as part defensive system. They moved with fluid grace, their bodies adapting in real time to counter each type of drone they encountered. Allen watched through his scanner as the defensive network revealed itself. "It's not random," he shouted over the sound of weapons fire and organic responses. "The entire ecosystem is designed for protection." A squadron of aerial drones tried to bypass the ground-based defenses, only to encounter flying creatures that seemed to phase through their energy beams while delivering precisely targeted electromagnetic bursts. The drones fell like metallic rain, their systems fried by biological warfare adapted beyond the Keth'moran's recognition. Reagan guided the creature to a central position where its influence could coordinate the entire defense. "It's learning from each attack," she called out, her voice filled with scientific wonder even in the midst of battle, adapting countermeasures faster than they can adjust their tactics. The creature itself began to change, its moss-like skin hardening into something resembling organic armor while its tendrils extended to impossible lengths. When a heavy assault drone broke through the perimeter defenses, the being wrapped it in a cocoon of living tissue that systematically dismantled the machine from the inside out. Vexai's mandibles clicked in rapid frustration as its forces were systematically neutralized by an ecosystem that fought like a single coordinated organism. This confirms the specimen's dangerous nature. It has weaponized an entire biosphere. Admiral Chen, observing from the safety of the human command post, watched the battle unfold with growing amazement. "Weapons? I see a planet defending itself from unprovoked attack. Commander Hayes, your position is that this ecosystem is beneficial to human colonization?" Hayes ducked as debris from a destroyed drone crashed nearby, his expression grim but determined. "Absolutely, Admiral. This world has become more suitable for human habitation than we ever dared hope." The final assault wave approached, heavier units that could potentially breach the Grove's defenses through sheer destructive power. But as they crested the ridge, the creature let out a harmonic call that resonated through every hybrid organism on the planet. The response was breathtaking. A massive spore cloud erupted from every corner of the transformed world, rising like a living aurora into the atmosphere. The cloud engulfed the remaining Keth'moran forces, not harming them, but rendering their weapons and sensors completely inert. In the sudden silence that followed, Architect Zephyra approached the grove's edge, its movements slow and deliberate. "Remarkable," it admitted, its harmonious voice carrying genuine awe. "We have never encountered such elegant resistance." Alan lowered his improvised weapons, his grin returning despite the adrenaline still coursing through his system. "Maybe it's time to reconsider your definition of defective." The transformed planet breathed. That was the only way Alan could describe the phenomenon he observed from the crystal observation tower that had grown overnight from the grove's edge. Atmospheric currents moved in patterns that suggested conscious intent, carrying hybrid spores to regions that needed specific biological adjustments. "The integration is complete," Reagan reported, her voice filled with quiet wonder as she studied readings from sensors that had themselves become part of the living ecosystem. Every major landmass shows signs of harmonized development. The planet isn't just habitable, it's actively supportive of human life. Commander Hayes stood beside them, his weathered features showing genuine contentment for the first time since Alan had known him. "Colonial administration has upgraded our mission status to exceptional success. 3 more colony ships are being diverted here from the Centauri systems." Below them, the creature rested in its grove, no longer the injured being they had rescued, but something far greater, the living heart of a world-scale symbiosis. Its tendrils extended through root networks that spanned the entire globe, connecting every living thing in a vast conscious network. The Keth'moran vessels, now inert and harmless, lay scattered across the transformed landscape, silent monuments to a failed attempt at control. Their crews, disoriented but unharmed, were being carefully guided by newly formed symbiotic creatures towards designated landing zones where human medical teams awaited. The Keth'moran delegation, including Overseer Vexai and Architect Zephyra, stood in stunned silence, observing the vibrant, thriving world that defied all their protocols and predictions. "This is unprecedented," Zephyra finally managed, its harmonious voice devoid of its usual certainty. Its iridescent skin seemed to shimmer with a new understanding. "The entity has not merely terraformed, it has evolved the very concept of a planetary ecosystem." Vexai remained rigid, its mandibles clicking, but the agitation was gone, replaced by a profound, almost fearful awe. The creature had not just defended itself, it had demonstrated a level of biological and strategic sophistication that dwarfed anything the Keth'morans had ever conceived. Their advanced biotools, designed for control and efficiency, paled in comparison to this entity's organic, adaptive brilliance. Admiral Chen from the Colonial Administration had landed and was making his way towards them, his face a mixture of disbelief and triumphant satisfaction. "Commander Hayes, your initial reports were understated. This isn't just a success, it's a miracle. The Colonial Administration is prepared to offer full support for this new form of colonization." Hayes nodded, a rare, genuine smile gracing his lips. "We prefer to call it coexistence, Admiral. This planet isn't just for us, it's with us." Alan, still buzzing with the planet's vibrant energy, stepped forward. "The creature isn't just a terraformer. It's a sentient being, and it wants to share this world. It communicates through empathy and biological integration. We've felt it." He glanced at Reagan, who nodded in agreement, her leaf tattoo glowing faintly. Reagan added, "Its corruption, as the Keth'morans called it, was simply an advanced form of biological altruism. It doesn't replace, it optimizes and integrates. It seeks harmony, not domination." She held up a hand, and a small, luminescent orb, a hybrid of plant and light, floated gently into her palm. "These are communication nodes. They allow us to interface directly with the planetary consciousness." Zephyra approached cautiously, its movements no longer precise and mechanical, but hesitant, almost reverent. "We designed our biotools for specific controlled outcomes. This one, it learned, it adapted, it surpassed its programming." "It learned from us," Alan corrected softly. "It learned compassion and defiance. It learned that some things are worth fighting for." He looked at the creature, which pulsed with a soft, inviting light. It saw our struggle to make this world habitable, and it offered a better way. The Keth'morans had always valued order and control above all else, their galactic empire built on meticulously engineered worlds and predictable outcomes. The creature, in its boundless capacity for organic innovation, was anathema to their philosophy. Yet, faced with the undeniable reality of a thriving, self-regulating world, their rigid beliefs were beginning to crack. "What will happen now?" Vexai asked, its voice surprisingly devoid of its usual metallic edge. "Will it transform us?" Reagan smiled gently. "Only if you allow it. The spores are an invitation, not a command. They offer connection, enhancement. They don't force change, they facilitate it." She extended her hand towards Vexai, offering the glowing orb. "It's a choice, Overseer, to remain separate or to become part of something greater." Vexai hesitated, its multifaceted eyes fixed on the orb. For a long moment the only sound was the gentle hum of the living planet and the rustle of the silver-barked trees. Then, slowly, tentatively, the Overseer reached out a clawed appendage and accepted the orb. As it did, a faint, warm light enveloped its chitinous form, and its mandibles clicked in a new, softer rhythm. A ripple of astonishment went through the remaining Keth'moran delegation. Zephyra stepped forward, its own hand extended. "We have much to learn," it admitted, taking another orb from Reagan. "Perhaps our understanding of perfection was limited." The arrival of the first colony ships from the Centauri systems was a spectacle of human engineering meeting alien biology. The massive vessels, designed for long-term interstellar travel, approached Kepler 442c with caution, their sensors reporting impossible readings. But as they entered the planet's transformed atmosphere, a wave of calm and welcome washed over their crews, a subtle, empathic greeting from the planetary consciousness. The colonists, a mix of scientists, engineers, and families seeking a new beginning, disembarked onto a world that was both alien and strangely familiar. The air was crisp and clean, the ground soft and yielding beneath their boots. They were met not by barren dust, but by fields of bioluminescent flora and creatures that moved with an almost ethereal grace. Alan and Reagan, now unofficial ambassadors for the living planet, greeted them alongside Commander Hayes. They explained the symbiosis, the creature's role, and the unique challenges and wonders of coexisting with a sentient ecosystem. The communication nodes shared freely allowed the colonists to experience the planet's gentle intentions firsthand, easing their fears and fostering a sense of belonging. Initial concerns about compatibility with human biology quickly dissolved. The spores, rather than altering human genetics, subtly enhanced their immune systems, improved their senses, and even alleviated chronic ailments, as Allen and Reagan had experienced. The planet, in its benevolent wisdom, adapted to its new inhabitants, creating microclimates and resources perfectly suited to human needs, while simultaneously enriching its own complex web of life. The Keth'morans, after prolonged study and cautious interaction, began to integrate. Their scientists, initially skeptical, became fascinated by the organic technologies and adaptive systems of Kepler-442c. They learned to shed their rigid protocols, embracing the fluidity and interconnectedness of the living world. Some even chose to remain, becoming part of the burgeoning multi-species community, their chitinous forms moving among humans and hybrid creatures, all connected by the planetary consciousness. Overseer Vex High, once the embodiment of rigid authority, found a new purpose. It became a bridge between the Keth'moran Empire and the sentient planet, advocating for a new understanding of life and evolution throughout the galaxy. It spoke of Kepler-442c not as a defective specimen, but as a living lesson, a testament to the boundless potential of uncontrolled, compassionate growth. Years passed. Kepler-442c, now affectionately known as Gaia by its human inhabitants, flourished. Cities grew not from steel and concrete, but from living structures that shifted and expanded with the needs of their inhabitants. Transportation was handled by organic pathways that pulsed with energy, and communication was a seamless, empathic exchange facilitated by the planetary network. Allen and Reagan, no longer just terraformers, became integral parts of this new society. They continued to study the creature, to learn from it, and to help guide the delicate balance between human progress and planetary harmony. Their relationship, forged in the crucible of defiance and shared purpose, deepened with each passing year, a quiet testament to the unexpected bonds that could form between disparate beings. The creature, the heart of Gaia, continued its work, not as a conqueror, but as a benevolent guardian. It extended its influence, not through force, but through invitation, sharing its unique biological wisdom with other barren worlds, transforming them into vibrant, self-sustaining ecosystems. It became a legend, a whispered hope across the galaxy, the story of a defective biotool that taught an entire civilization the true meaning of life, connection, and the boundless potential of a world that truly breathed. The universe, once seen as a collection of resources to be exploited, began to be viewed through new eyes, as a vast, interconnected tapestry of life waiting to be understood and cherished. The humans, once seen as an unpredictable emotional species, became known as the ones who, when everyone else left a beast to die, chose to save it, and in doing so, saved themselves.